I think that as we talk about people coming into organizations and both A, being there in a way that's meaningful to them and helpful to the organization, and then B, keeping them there, obviously there's no secret, but there's a few things that I do keep in mind. The first one is a responsibility that I have, which is to be clear about the purpose of the organization. What in fact are we trying to do? If we can't be clear about that, and I don't mean a simple 7-word mission statement, I mean clear from your spirit and your intelligence, your heart, your gut, your knowledge of the environment, the field, the funders, clarity and all of that, always working on it, but that's where it starts. And then you're asking people to join you in taking not just the mission, it is the mission, but I don't mean, again, a simplistic phrase at the top of a brochure, but I mean the heart, core work of the organization. You're asking somebody to join you to do that. So you have to be clear. You have to be able to articulate it to the people that you're asking to join you. And then, and this is huge, you have to make sure that they have the tools and the resources and the support and the connection and the communication to actually do what you ask them to do. Too many nonprofits, I think, ask people to do things that are next to impossible sometimes. We all like challenges, that's fine. But if the challenge turns out to be ultimately impossible, you'll burn people out. And you can't keep them then, and it's not humane to keep them. I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves we are running a marathon, not a sprint. And often the work in a small nonprofit organization can feel like you're running the 100-yard dash over and over and over again. Eventually, that will burn people out. I think you have to be creative about that. I deliberately look for non-traditional networks of people and sources. I ask people outside my immediate field, whether it's my Humanities Center or I was running a music center before this, to go beyond those networks. But I want to answer that, Tim, with an internal question first, because often I've come to different organizations and helped them go from one stage to the next stage. So the question I start with inside the organization is this one, with the people who are already there. I ask them, tell me, when things are going really well, what is that like for you? And then I listen carefully, and then I say, how can I help you do more of that? And now we're on the same path, if you will. We're listening to each other, we're understanding each other, and then they are often the person who knows the next person that we need. And an example of this is in the music center that I was at. There were 2 or 3 people very interested in music therapy, but we had no music therapy program. I'm not an expert on music therapy, but I said, when this is going well, what is that like? And they told me about their work with clients and kids. And I said, how can I help you do more of that? They had very practical things we could do. We grew that program from 6 or 8 to when I left the organization, it was well over 600 clients in music therapy. If only we knew all the time. I don't know all the time, but I think it goes to honesty and authenticity of communication. Some of this is about their background. I think a profound question is, why do you want to be here? What do you hope to do for yourself when you join our organization? So it's both what can you do for the organization, but I accept the fact that people themselves need to do something that matters to them. So what would you like to learn or to grow into or to do better or to contribute? In other words, what brings you here? And I have to ask that often 2 or 3 times so that I can really understand it. Well, if people keep leaving, I think you need to examine what I alluded to a minute ago. What is it you ask them to do? Do they have the tools and the resources to really do it? Don't ask people to do the impossible over and over and over again. It's not healthy for an organization to turn the people we hire into used up little charcoal embers. So I don't ask people to do something that I can't reasonably expect them and hope for them to do. And then it's my job to make sure, as I said, they have the knowledge, the skills, the tools, the support to really do it. If we provide all of that, and then they still cannot or will not do it, then we need to come to a separation of some kind and hope it's amiable and we can go forward. But it's a responsibility of the employer and the boss to make sure that what you ask people to do, they are reasonably equipped to do it. You can't ultimately control the person. You can control the circumstances in the environment in which we work, but even then, only up to a degree. So especially in our volatile, kind of funny, changing, often divisive times, I'll share a story that I used with a young woman who worked for me. A person left, the development officer left. This young woman I made the interim director of development. She said, "Terrific! What can I do to prove to you that I can become the director of development?" And I said, "You need to learn to live with ambiguity and paradox." And she was taken aback, and I said, "Honestly, these are skill sets now we need in today's world, because things change quickly. Ambiguity simply means we often have to make a decision without all the information in the world that we love. And paradox means that it can often seem conflicted. A funder wants this, the program wants that, what do we do? We have to live within ambiguity and paradox and still go forward. So I think we need to support people in the capacity of living with uncertainty and acting with good core values and faith anyhow. So I'd say one of the attributes that we can control, if you will, is to know and understand and keep articulating the very core values of what brought us to this work in the first place. A lot of the environment we cannot control. I think there's 2 or 3 things that we as managers and directors need to keep looking at. One is I try to make in every organization that I'm in the actual budget, goals, benchmarks, and expectations clear to everybody. So everybody knows what's going on, what the status is, what the budget looks like, what our program benchmarks are, so they all know. My bottom line philosophy is if everybody knows, then they can act more intelligently in this volatile world that we're in. Secondly, we're beset all the time, and there's a vast literature, of course, on looking ahead and getting beyond the immediate press of things. And the fact is, we have to. So setting aside time to step aside, which we do periodically here at the Humanities Center, 2 or 3 hour meetings, every couple of weeks or so. We need to do this so that we can both understand what the mission really means. What does it mean to you in your work life? How are you connected to it? How do you feel your program contributes to it? What do you need to know? Do you know what the person next to you does? I never assume communication is actually taking place. We're healthier if everybody knows what's going on, if we've shared foundational information, budget, expectations, challenges, and if we practice looking slightly ahead, and you actually have to practice it and spend time doing it. Those things really matter. Then I can trust smart people, and I like hiring smart people. They can get the skill sets if they're smart. Then the smart people, knowing the situation and supported, hopefully with the right tools, will make really good decisions. I want to share that favorite question again. When things are going really well, what is that like for you? And how can I help you do more of that? That says there's a lot you know already. Let's build on that. I'd say my final motto is my favorite takeaway motto. Let's build on strength. And we do that. It's worked for me. I think I've transformed at least three different organizations now and a couple of national programs. It works.